1.6 BlueHDI 92 horsepower DV6 heated, 1.6 BlueHDI 115 horsepower DV6S, DV6FC. The second generation Peugeot 308 is most often found with a 1.6-liter turbo diesel. This is an 8-valve engine with a timing belt drive, an injection system from Continental, and a light alloy cylinder block. All HDI engines on Peugeots and Citroëns are good, and this engine is no exception. Mechanical breakdowns do not occur here, but many owners have had and will still have to deal with minor oil leaks. The elastic pipe, 0382PJ, with steel rings, located above the turbocharger, fogs up over 200,000 kilometers. Just exchange it for the original or a substitute. By the way, it has been noticed that replacing this pipe helps solve the problem of lack of traction and jerking that occurs when starting at low speeds. Sometimes the steel pipe for draining oil from the turbocharger cartridge slowly fogs up. The original O-ring is sold only with the tube. If you're lucky, you can pick up an oil-resistant ring. It's not that uncommon for leaks to appear on the valve cover. You need to change the gasket, 0249.G2. The original one costs $34. The most unpleasant oil leak occurs along the camshaft bed. The aluminum bed is screwed to the cylinder head, and sealant is applied to the joint of the parts. To eliminate leakage at the joint, you will have to remove the camshaft with its bed, clean everything, remove the factory sealant, and apply a new one. By the way, it is because of a leak from under the camshaft bed that oil appears around the fuel injectors. But the reality is that this engine is hung with complex environmental systems, and even such that experienced fans of French diesel cars did not immediately make friends with them. So, the injection of urea, carbamide, the AdBlue additive, is responsible for the cleanliness of diesel exhaust on these machines, and injection of the Aisin additive, AILIS. The first is injected into the exhaust system through a separate nozzle before the catalyst and particulate filter. The second additive is automatically mixed into the fuel. There is a problem with the AdBlue system. On many cars, the temperature sensor of this additive and its heater fail. All of them are built into the AdBlue tank. They can only be changed together as a single module. Of course, no one buys a new urea tank. It costs about $1,000. The way to deal with this system is simple: turn to specialists who will completely fix it. The AdBlue tank can then simply be removed. The service for complete programmatic removal of AdBlue along with removal of the particulate filter costs an average of $400. Of course, many Peugeot 308s on the secondary market have this system removed. If the AdBlue system still works normally, the injector of this system may need to be replaced. A new original urea injection nozzle, 9802763880, costs about $200. Usually this injector leaks additives. In this case, errors appear regarding the clogged particulate filter and the content of nitrogen oxides. A leak of urea is indicated by the formation of frost-like crystals on the nozzle itself and under it, on the boot of the engine compartment. There is also a problem with the valve in the AdBlue tank cap. In this car, it is located under the floor of the luggage compartment. In the restyled 308s, it is under the hatch next to the tank neck. This lid has a hole with a membrane through which air enters as the tank empties. So, if this hole and the membrane are clogged with urea crystals, then the tank is evacuated over time, which, of course, prevents the pump from pumping their liquid out of it. As a result, errors appear in the AdBlue system. The lid of the urea tank can simply be washed in warm water. You can disassemble the cover and remove the membrane. In later revisions, there is no membrane in this lid. It simply works as a filter, so this problem does not arise. By the way, the AdBlue system pump fails very rarely. Note that as soon as errors appear in the AdBlue system, the car turns on the counter. With a faulty injection of this additive, you can drive about 1,000 kilometers. If the system is not repaired, then the ECU simply will not give the go-ahead to start the engine. The AILIS additive system usually works without problems, although pump failures do occur. The pump is sold together with the tank. Only the original, 1,610,115,580, is available for $170. This additive helps increase the combustion temperature of diesel fuel to effectively burn through the particulate filter. The tank volume of this additive is 1.7 liters, but a message about the need to refill appears when 1 liter is consumed. This amount of this additive is consumed in approximately 180,000 kilometers. A liter of third-generation Ailis additive costs $100-$120. Refueling is done from under the bottom. It is imperative to register the refueling with AILIS, both in the ECU and in the computer of the pump of this system. 1.5 BlueHDI 100 horsepower, 130 horsepower, DV5 TED4, DV5RC. The restyled Peugeot 389 received a 1.5-liter turbo diesel. Essentially, this is the same 1.6-liter engine, only with a reduced piston stroke and a new 16-valve cylinder head with 2 camshafts. The timing belt is routed in a very similar way and drives the intake camshaft directly. The exhaust camshaft is driven by a short roller chain. So this chain turned out to be unsuccessful, it stretches and, what is most expensive and unpleasant, breaks. This chain does not rattle or rustle, in general, its wear does not show itself anyway. The recommendation to change it appeared after numerous cases of breakage. This happened with runs of about 150,000 kilometers. The chain itself, 9,826,028,980, costs only $20, its tensioner costs $40. When replacing the chain, you need to remove the nozzles. Be sure to install them on new fireproof washers. If it breaks, even at idle, the valves bend slightly. A compression check is required. If the chain breaks while driving, the sprockets and camshaft cams may turn, even its tensioner breaks off. The Peugeot 389 also has a 2-liter turbo diesel, but such options are not imported because they are more expensive and customs clearance is higher. Before moving on to gasoline engines, let's pay attention to the air filter housing, which is mounted on 4 damping bushings. After a mileage of more than 200,000 kilometers, these bushings burst. You can recognize the problem by shaking the filter housing. If it wobbles too much to the sides, then the bushings need to be changed. 4 bushings will cost $12. The consequences of a shaking air filter housing are not only unnecessary vibrations and rattling, but also chafing of the wires and the harnesses located under it. When replacing the bushings, we advise you to inspect the wiring located underneath it, namely the harness with 4 wires in it. 1.2 V 82 horsepower EB2F, 1.2 THP 110 horsepower EB2 DT, 1.2 THP 130 horsepower EB2 DTS. There are much fewer offers with gasoline engines. Sometimes there are versions with a 3-cylinder 1.2 PureTech petrol engine. The bottom line is that the death of this engine occurred due to the fact that the timing belt running in oil, namely as wear products, worsened the operation of the lubrication system. In Europe, these engines were literally changed in batches during long service intervals. But if you change the oil in it every 7,500 kilometers and do not allow the timing belt to fluff too much, then this tiny engine can easily run 400,000 kilometers. True, during this time you will need to replace the valve stem seals 1 to 2 times. Quite often, due to their hardening, oil leakage occurs. 1.6 THP 155 horsepower EP6 DT, 1.6 THP 163 horsepower, 1.6 GTI 272 horsepower EP6 DTFR. It is very rare that the Peugeot 389 in our countries is equipped with a 1.6-liter turbo engine. These are variants of the great and terrible EP6 engine, and here the situation is the same. This engine needs good oil and shortened replacement intervals. If you come across a damaged engine, the cost of repairing it will be unpleasant. One good thing is that its block can be reshelled if it comes down to it. Most often, the most common diesel engines on these machines were equipped with a manual transmission. In this case, the machine is equipped with a dual-mass flywheel. The cost of this part is about $1,000 for the original or about $700 for a replacement from the original manufacturer. Apparently, with adequate operation, the dual-mass flywheel lasts more than 300,000 kilometers. Aisin TF-71SC 6-street automatic transmission. Aisin TF-80SC 6-street automatic transmission. 2-pedal Peugeot 389 with engines up to 1.6 liters inclusive are equipped with 6-speed automatic Aisin TF-72SC. This transmission is based on the Aisin TF-80SC, which was paired with a 2-liter diesel engine. Both transmissions do not have serious systematic problems. It is necessary to update their oil every 60,000 kilometers, and it is very advisable to provide them with a separate cooling radiator. Aisin TG-81SC F8F U881 8-street automatic transmission. After restyling, Peugeot began to install 8-speed machine. This is a super common transmission from Aisin, which was developed and tested on Lexus and Toyota, and then it appeared on literally all front-wheel drive platforms, right up to VAG, BMW and Mini. This is a good, reliable transmission. Of course, she is picky about the condition of the oil. The oil here can and should be changed, albeit using the method of 2 partial changes. The oil should be changed every 60,000 kilometers, especially since quite ordinary ATF with Toyota WS approval is used for refueling. The rear wheels of the Peugeot 308 are suspended on a torsion beam. It has been noticed that over time this beam begins to creak. It is two-layered. It is believed that the creaking occurs due to the mutual friction of these two layers. What to do with this squeak? Either endure it or fill the beam with inexpensive oil, nigger or waste oil. There is also an option with foaming. There are holes on top for access to its internal cavity. The original springs of the front and rear suspension often burst, and along the upper coils. In addition, the rear springs sag quite quickly, but this applies to SW station wagons, which often carry heavy loads. Original front 9806-7 and rear suspension springs 9805-3 will cost $180, but analogs from well-known manufacturers are also offered at 2 times cheaper. The front suspension arms are fully repairable. As experience shows, with a mileage of about 150,000 kilometers, it is necessary to replace the burst rear silent blocks of the levers. The original ones are not on sale, and good replacements will cost $25 a piece. They say that non-original silent blocks last 60,000 kilometers. The same situation applies to front silent blocks and removable ball joints. Good replacements will cost $15 and $25, respectively. To remove the front silent blocks, you need special equipment, and the rear silent blocks washers need to be correctly oriented and pressed to the correct depth. When removing the right lever, you should be careful with the right rod of the body position sensor connected to it. The rod can be broken or you can forget to secure it after installing the lever. Front stabilizer bushings are not sold separately. There are no replacements for them yet. Original stabilizer links cost $65. Rear wheel bearings come with the hubs. They will cost $120 for the original and may need to be replaced after a mileage of about 200,000 kilometers. At the same time, it is possible that they have already been changed after a mileage of 100,000 kilometers in Europe. At the front, sometimes you have to change a humming outboard bearing on the right axle shaft. The original is sold separately for $25. We also note that to replace the rear brake pads, you will have to use a diagnostic scanner to cope with the electromechanical parking brake mechanism. Simply put, you need to separate the rear pads in service mode. The Peugeot 308 has been in production for about 9 years, during which time the body has performed well. There is literally nothing to worry about. Corrosion does not threaten French metal. The hood and front fenders of this car are made of aluminum, so red dots will never appear on them. Sometimes on some cars paint blisters appear on the underside of the hood near its front edge. If you dig deeper in search of corrosion, then frivolous and superficial saffron caps can be found over the weld points on the front side members. They can be seen after removing the front lockers. The mounting parts in the side doors are also slightly corroded. Over time, the rubber seal on the front doors of the Peugeot 308 T9 breaks. A 1 to 2 cm tear occurs at the very top of the front doors near the second roof pillar. It is clear that a clever elastic glue is needed to secure this tail. The front limiters on this car somehow begin to wear out early. Those in cars with a mileage of about 200,000 kilometers, the driver's door already clicks loudly when opening and closing. Experience shows that replacing the repair kit for limiter crackers is the best way out. The original repair kit is not that expensive. To remove the limiter, you will have to remove the door card. The drainage holes in the doors of the Peugeot 308 are located high from the bottom edge. This means that water collects in the groove inside the door after heavy rains or washing. True, so far this has not led to any problems. Over time, the clutch pedal begins to creak and vibrate, and later the sounds complement the tight and uneven pedal stroke. This means that the spring rod needs lubrication, which ensures its reverse motion. Everything is simple here. You need to remove the pedal and its spring, add lubricant to the plastic stop, 98-203-429-80. It happens less often that this stop falls apart and is pressed through by the spring. In this case, the pedal develops free play at the very beginning of its stroke when pressed. A new stop will cost $17. The windshield washer reservoir of the second generation Peugeot 308 is composite. Under the hood there is an initial reservoir with a lid, and on the side it is connected to the main reservoir, hidden behind the right wing. So, a liquid leak appears at the junction of the tanks. You can eliminate it using any traditional method, even by wrapping electrical tape around the side tube of the first tank.